Hello and welcome to Slow Pit Stop, the international Formula One podcast by fans for fans all around the world. My name's Arafat, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host. Say hi, Mohammed.
Why are you so obsessed with Bluey? Hi, Mohammed.
Bluey is the best show that has ever been created. Do you know, I've heard this thing recently, I don't know how true it is, but guess what the top 3 streamed shows in the world are?
One of them is definitely going to be Masha and the Lion, or Masha and the Bear, right? I think that's number one. No? Okay. No. All right, walk me through it. What are the top stream shows in the country, in the world?
The Suits? Not The Suits. Suits.
Okay.
For Meghan some Markle. Unknown reason. US Office, deservedly.
Okay.
And Bluey.
Wow. I don't think it's big in America. I've not seen a single episode of Bluey.
Really?
And I typically see things for other shows like Masha and the Bear. Yeah, I don't know. And I have young family members in the age range of Bluey. I've only seen the memes.
So Bluey, the episodes are like 6 minutes long. It's Australian. But I feel like it's not Australian. A show for kids.
It's too far away. Yeah. If it's Australian, it won't reach our airwaves. It's across the world.
It's on Disney Plus. But it is a show about how to be a parent.
What? Really?
Yeah, it's very much for the parents. It's parenting lessons in little 6-minute chunks. Each episode is 6 minutes.
Why does everyone look like the meme about Bluey is that parents will be like, I watched that episode and I cried. Why are you crying? Why is
because it deals with like heavy stuff. So it deals with things like death and things like that. And it's how to talk to your kids when they're grieving. And stuff like that. So that it makes it really beautiful in that sense.
How many children are grieving out there that we need to be talking about death and teaching parents?
All children are grieving because of what Max Verstappen is inflicting upon us.
Let's bring it back to the topic.
Back to Formula One.
Nice transition. Sorry to our listeners for that detour and also for our little break. I had not been able to see an entire Formula One session from Australia until the sprint race in China. So that's what my life was like. So it's all my fault. I take the blame.
Yeah, both of us have been very busy with work, sadly. But we are back and we're here to talk about the Japanese Grand Prix. But we're actually going to be talking about a lot of the drama around the Japanese Grand Prix. I think I want to talk about today. Well, first thing I want to talk about today is what's going on with Red Bull.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about the other teams, but through the eyes of Carlos Sainz and how he tries to decide, based on what he saw at the Chinese Grand Prix, what team he should sign for next year.
Yeah.
So, with regards to Red Bull, do you remember, for the last few episodes, I've been saying, look, there's this horrible stuff going on with Christian Horner. It's not transparent at all. It feels like justice isn't being done for this person that has now lost their job as well. And as horrible as that whole situation is, it still felt to me like a play in part of a larger power struggle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Someone found dirt on Horner and is using it for wider purposes rather than that thing in of itself requiring justice.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I was like, trying to work out what the angle was. Why is someone trying to get rid of Christian Horner? Because if I'm sat on the board somewhere and Christian Horner has, as annoying as he is, he's created a period of dominance, and then you can't say, well, he lost it and then he completely lost it because actually his first period of dominance was all just thanks to Ross Brawn. He's actually brought Red Bull back to a second period of dominance.
Shots fired,
Ross
but
Brawn
okay.
has obviously never been in anything to do with Red Bull, but we'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
But I couldn't understand why anyone would want to fire him or get rid of him until now. Until the question came up of, could Carlos Sainz go to Red Bull, right? So Mark Hughes, Formula One reporter, wrote an article for the race about how Sainz is a pawn in a wider power struggle between Team Horner and Team Verstappen.
Wow, what?
And Team Horner and Team Verstappen are not the same thing. So we know that back in the day, 2015 or whatever it was, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen were teammates at Toro Rosso,
Yeah.
right? But the way Max Verstappen got to Toro Rosso was unconventional. So Carlos Sainz joined the Red Bull Junior Driver Program. He'd raced in F3, F2, whatever for them. Was deemed to be good enough and made the jump up into Formula One. Max Verstappen, his dad kept saying no. Mercedes came looking, Ferrari came looking, Red Bull came looking. And Red Bull, when I say they came looking, it was Helmut Marko. So Helmut Marko comes along and he's like, I want that kid, he's really good. Jos Verstappen goes, no, we like our independence. And he keeps coming back, I want your kid, I want your kid, I want your kid. No, no, no. Until eventually he goes, right, the time is now. Mercedes are wanting him, Ferrari are wanting him. Give us an F1 contract. And what Mark Hughes was saying is Jos Verstappen behaved as if he was doing Red Bull, the organization, a giant favor by letting Max race for them. And he had in his contract that if by a certain cutoff date in 2016, he didn't have a contract with Red Bull, the senior team, they were allowed to walk away and go race for Mercedes or Ferrari or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, Horner didn't like that. He was like, what is happening? Why is the driver suddenly being given so much power? And Jos Verstappen noted that Christian Horner didn't like that. Okay? And I want to talk to you about the battle between Sainz and Verstappen.
How are you making me sympathize with Christian Horner? You're doing the impossible.
I know, and I'm going to do it even more, but this is crazy. Okay. So I'm going to read from Mark Hughes' article here, and you can just react as I go.
Yeah.
So, a tone was set in their very first event as teammates, the 2015 Australian Grand Prix. Sainz made it to Q3, Verstappen did not. Jos was watching from the garage and was displeased with the timing of Max's Q2 run. It was too late, left him too vulnerable without any margin if something went wrong, which it did. When Jos queried this, he was told that the team operated as one and that the runs of the two cars were part of a coordinated run plan. Max's engineer did not have the authority to override this. Jos took this issue direct to Helmut Marko, having no compunction about going over the head of team principal Franz Tost. The Verstappens were not here to be subjugated to anyone. Wow. Marko did his best to calm the waters. He personally briefed Max's engineering team that in any such situation in the future, they could act with autonomy and he would smooth things out with Franz Tost. Right?
Wow.
Crazy. So the run plan didn't rear its head again until Sochi 2016. So Helmut Marko, I think, Jos has said no to him so many times that he is now desperate for Max. And he's like, I will do whatever to keep Max in our team.
Wow. Okay, wow. All right.
Okay?
Okay, yeah.
So the run plan issue didn't rear its head again until Sochi 2016. The engineers defied the run plan to get him out at what they considered the most favourable time. Franz Tost was infuriated and two of the engineers were fired that very weekend.
Oh my God. Wow.
Helmut Marko found them jobs elsewhere.
What?
Max was promoted up to the Red Bull team. So that was, weekend? Remember Max in 2016. So he went the next race in Spain. So it wasn't so much just about Kvyat doing badly. It was about Toro Rosso being uncomfortable with the Verstappens and being like, we don't want this guy here anymore.
Wow.
So Red Bull put him up into the team. And this is why...
Sainz was the other Toro Rosso and...
Sainz was the other driver. Yeah.
And Kvyat was at Red Bull back then. He wasn't at Toro Rosso.
Yeah, Kvyat was at Red Bull. Okay. And so Max went and took Kvyat's car, girlfriend, child, everything.
Yeah, okay.
But this is why the Verstappens were so upset about the whole Perez situation in Monaco and why Max didn't help Perez get second position in the championship.
Wow.
Remember, where was it? Mexico, Brazil? I can't even remember anymore. He didn't help Max. He didn't help Perez, sorry. Yeah.
Not Saudi. Brazil? I actually don't remember. Yes, but continue.
Can't remember.
Correct.
But so the problem was Dietrich Mateschitz, who died a couple of years ago, was there, who was friends with both Horner and Helmut Marko.
Yeah.
Helmut Marko doesn't work for the Red Bull F1 team. He works for the Red Bull, the company.
Mm-hmm.
And him and Max have a lot of loyalty to each other. And anytime Jos sees something that he doesn't like, he goes to Marko and says, sort this out, or we're going
Wow.
to Mercedes, we're going to Ferrari. That's why Jos has been seen having breakfast with Toto Wolff. Max has no intention of going to Mercedes, right? But Jos
Till now,
Verstappen uses it
the
as a
threat works.
threat.
Till now. Till now.
Yeah.
How can the threat still work though? Like, surely Helmut Marko's got to call the bluff and be like, "You're really gonna go to the fifth fastest team?"
Christian Horner is happy to call the bluff because Christian Horner's like, I can put Sainz in this car and get the same results.
Yeah.
But Helmut Marko, for whatever reason, is in love with Verstappen and does not want to let him go and will do whatever it takes to keep them happy. So anytime Horner does something in the interest of fairness, maybe help Perez or whatever, Helmut Marko comes along and starts
Oh
throwing
my
spanners into
goodness.
the work. And this is
Yeah,
why
this is
Marko has
literally.
been saying,
Oh my god.
this is why Marko says all these racist things or whatever to destabilize Perez. And the idea of bringing Ricciardo back, Ricciardo is a Horner ally. And Helmut
Yeah.
Marko doesn't like him because he was like, this guy wasn't loyal. This is
Yeah.
why Helmut Marko keeps being like, I'm going to replace this guy with Liam Lawson. I'm going to replace this guy with Liam Lawson. I'm going to drop him. He's out, whatever. Because he doesn't want Ricciardo. But Horner sees if he can get a driver in to the second car that would, not necessarily beat Max, but agitate him enough, it would then change the power balance in the team. Whereas now
No,
the
that's so
power
true
balance
though.
is Team Verstappen Marko and Team
Yeah.
Horner.
Well, because Helmut Marko said recently those big comments where he was like, "We can't match the offer Sauber is putting out for Carlos Sainz." Like, it's
Yeah.
completely out of the park. No reason to make this comment.
Yeah.
And he made this comment, and then Horner was like, "I don't comment." Like, he's like, "The silly season market is full of everything. You don't comment on everything." But it makes sense. That
Yeah.
completely matches what you're saying. That he's trying to destabilize Sainz coming to Red Bull. So he's putting out all these stories
Yeah.
about, oh, Sauber is giving him a huge offer. Red
Yeah.
Bull can't match it. Like, yeah.
And this is why
Wow.
when there was all this talk about Marko being fired, Verstappen was suddenly being like, I might not still be racing here. I might leave, blah, blah, blah. Because Team Verstappen, whether it comes from Jos or Mark or Max or both or whatever, they like having Marko as their ally
So weird.
because they do feel aggrieved anytime another driver is given any attention or whatever.
Yeah.
They are very upset about it. They go to Marko, and Marko's job is to sort it for them, which is
So
mad as a team dynamic, I think, and which is why they want Horner gone, because they feel
Yeah.
Horner is not their
oh my
puppet.
god, how am I empathizing with Christian Horner?
It's weird, right? I feel dirty, like I need to have a shower or something. But this is
That's
what the situation
crazy.
is.
And so Helmut Marko, he's the one who leaked this whole thing about Christian Horner. He's trying to get him out of his job. Crazy. How?
Wild, right?
Where does Red Bull go from this? Like, wow. What is their second seat going to be? Are they going to keep Perez in there because he's nice and quiet and he's on the
So it
podium
looks
every
like
week?
for now, Perez will stay. Perez is doing an okay job. I think Ricciardo is in trouble. Ricciardo has gone from being talked about as the Perez replacement to is he going to be replaced by Liam Lawson mid-season? And that's not just like me saying that. That's you can go to Joe Sayward's blog and he's talking about that as well.
Yeah.
The other chat is if the 2026 engine is terrible and Verstappen decides to leave, Alex Albon is the plan to be brought in as the Verstappen replacement. But Albon doesn't want to race with Verstappen because of the whole Helmut Marko drama.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense why there's so much pressure on Gasly and Albon. It's part of the Red Bull meat factory, but it makes sense if there's, especially now, something really driving that meat grinder, which is complete loyalty to Max Verstappen. Because you're right, like Horner, he's done a really good job actually. Like literally, like even when they weren't winning championships, the team was running very well. Like the team was like a well-oiled machine running very well. And so you really can't fault the team principal. It was their issues with their engine manufacturer and other things, but they were always there to pick up the pieces whenever Mercedes couldn't win a race. It was Red Bull was right there. When the fighting was done between Ferrari and Mercedes, it was Red Bull ready to pick up the pieces. So yeah, it's quite incredible that the way this has unfolded. But what is the neatest, the nicest starting point for all of this drama? Because why would they want Horner gone? It's not like he's attacking Marco, or he was. He came at
So
Marco.
I think Marco and Horner don't get on because both of them feel like they are top dog. Marco is an advisor to the Red Bull Racing, and Christian Horner is told to report to Helmut Marko. This is the whole Austria tie divide.
Yeah.
Christian Horner's ideal situation is to convince Red Bull, the team in Austria, to either sell it to the tie part of Red Bull or even sell it to Ford. And he would, how Toto Wolff owns 30%?
Yeah.
There's all this talk of Christian Horner wanting to own a share of that team so that he has his power consolidated. He's gotten rid of Red Bull. Say Red Bull stays on as a sponsor, whatever. We'll cover the car in Red Bull stickers.
Yeah.
But the team is owned by me, by Ford, and a third by the tie part of Red Bull.
That would lead to the destruction of Red Bull down the line because we see it now.
Or it future-proofs it. It future-proofs it because right now what you have is an organization with two leaders that don't get on. What made them get on was above them was Dietrich Mateschitz, who had the ultimate call on things and would keep both of those parties in check.
But side note, you look at Mercedes has that same dynamic. It's owned by Toto, Ineos, and Mercedes. And you've seen entrenchment now of the leadership, and there's not really one person overlooking it. There's three people sharing control. So that turns it from two people to three people,
I don't know. Like all these different leadership models, if you end up winning, people look back and go, yes, that was the right model. And if you lose, people look back and go, that was the wrong thing to do.
Look, all I know is organizations are run better when one person is in charge of everything. That's why I'm in charge of Slow Pit Stop. And you're my minion.
Yeah. But yeah, I think ultimately whatever model you use, it's not so much the problem with the model, it's the people that you put into that model.
Fair enough. Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Let's see if Ford can build an engine first before we start talking about giving them a third of control of the entire team.
Yeah.
Wow, what a story. What a breakdown of the drama. So Sainz probably not to Red Bull, you think? You think he's going to go elsewhere?
So I think Horner wants him in there. I think Horner wants him in there.
To replace Perez or to replace Max?
To replace Perez. And he would also be a good medium-term prospect if Max, for some reason, decided to leave. 2026 comes around, the engine is rubbish. Max either retires or goes to Ferrari or whatever. I know, but yeah. But I think Marco is too powerful.
Yeah.
I think Marco wouldn't allow it.
Oh, so you're saying
because Jos Verstappen doesn't want it. Jos Verstappen doesn't want a driver that will agitate Max and therefore wants someone that's not too strong. Wow. And so because the Verstappens don't want it, Marco doesn't want it. Horner's like, is this my team or not? Like, why am I not allowed to decide who my drivers are?
I just wish that I was coddled 10% of how Max is being coddled in this situation. That's all I want. I want people around me to just make life so easy for me and get rid of the people who are making me upset. I don't want to go through life with any difficulties. Just 10% of what Max gets. That's all I'm asking for.
Do you know what I find really strange? Like, Max is, as a talent, good enough to not need this political nonsense. Do you know what I mean?
This is like Lance Stroll levels of keeping him in power. Like
Exactly. Like if Lance Stroll was doing all of this, you'd be like, this is like, billionaire's gonna billionaire. What can you do? But like Max Verstappen doesn't need this. So what is happening? And why did he feel so personally aggrieved when he was asked to help Perez? He was just like, I don't know, like
yeah.
Horner had like slapped him in the face or something.
How dare you? But then he did help him later, right? Like in
Did he?
Brazil or Mexico. He gave him a toe. He did. He gave him a toe.
Great. Thanks.
I think it was Saudi. Where they're like, I think he overtook. I don't remember. I cannot remember. But you know what? I can't remember what happened in China. And that
it was Perez
like
versus Leclerc, and he needed a certain number of points.
At the end of the year, yeah. That's when he helped him.
At the end of the year. And it was like 2 or 3 races before the end of the year. And Max didn't let him pass, even though like Leclerc was ahead of him.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Might have been Mexico or something. Yeah. I think it was Mexico.
But yeah,
I think
and Max had already won the championship by that point. So it's what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, why does he feel so insulted if his team is helping the other driver?
Do you think Lewis was ever like that with Valtteri?
I don't think so. I think Toto Wolff was not like that with his drivers. And like a lot of like us as Lewis Hamilton fans will complain and be like, why is George getting this? Why is like whatever happening? And the fact that Nico Rosberg won the World Championship in 2016 tells you that Toto Wolff was not like putting everything on one driver or the other.
Yeah.
But I think Lewis, the fact that he's got such a good personal relationship with Valtteri, they still travel to places together, they hang out, they're like actual friends. I don't think Valtteri would have felt he was unjustly treated. Whatever the internal rules of the team were, I don't think Valtteri would have felt he was treated so unjustly by Lewis or like there was politics going on, because like how would you carry on being friends with someone like that?
Yeah.
You know?
We need to talk later about the current Lewis Toto dynamic, but let's get to the next thing, which is what you were saying about looking at teams through the eyes of Carlos Sainz. I love this thought experiment. I'm very excited to do it.
So let's talk about the Chinese Grand Prix through Carlos Sainz's potential options.
Okay.
So we've decided Red Bull don't want him. Well, half of Red Bull wants him, but the more powerful half of Red Bull doesn't want him.
Yeah.
So we're going to say that's a maybe. The other big maybe is Audi. So Audi, which has bought Sauber, is apparently very much after Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg. Those are the two drivers at once. There are other teams in discussion with Hülkenberg, and there are other teams in discussion with Sainz.
Yeah.
And everything else in the driver market is apparently waiting on the Sainz Audi decision before anyone else makes any other moves.
Here's my question. Are we expecting a crazy good car when Audi comes in? Because
not to start with.
Okay. Because look at Kick Sauber right now. I can't believe I just called them that.
Yeah.
But look at them.
Yeah.
What are they doing out there?
Right now, I think they're just trying to like stay financially afloat. But if they come in with this new engine regulation and Audi builds this new engine, I think it's a gamble that they could do something, you know, the way when Aston Martin was last year when they were suddenly doing really well.
Yeah.
Or the
Something
first
like
year of like the 2014 regulations, Mercedes were first, but Williams were ending up like second and third because they had that Mercedes engine also, and they were right up there. You know, Valtteri was getting podiums and things.
Yeah.
And I think Williams finished third in the constructor at some point.
Yeah.
I might have made that up in my head, but
no,
so nobody is going to say yes. Next year, Audi comes in and wins the world championship, but it could be a good potential long-term project.
Yeah.
Over sort of 5 years or something.
And Audi's really committed to it long-term.
Yeah.
So why do they want? I guess they want experienced drivers instead of rookies. Wouldn't it be better to bring in rookies that they develop?
Well, no, because they want the experienced drivers to drive the team forward and be like, how do we build this car? How do we get ahead quicker?
That's why they want Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
Interesting that Nico had like a dead F1 career and then now is being talked up by from multiple
Yeah.
teams.
But you look at, he scored points in China, didn't he? How was Haas's
Yeah.
race?
Yeah. I think. I don't remember.
But he scored points.
Yeah.
And
Let me
he's.
look it up.
Have you heard that they're talking about a new point system?
Yeah, where they're going to extend down to P12.
Yeah, so points all the way down to P12. And under the new
Hulkenberg
point
in
system,
10, Magnussen in 16. But yeah, he scored points.
yeah, but under the new point system, I think Hulkenberg would jump above someone else, Yuki Tsunoda or something.
Oh, wow.
Because Yuki has a 7th and a 10th place,
Yeah.
but his other ones are 14 and 15.
Yeah.
Whereas Nico would, his 11th place would give him points as well. And that would then move Haas above Racing Bulls, the stupidest team name ever. But yeah, that would, because Haas
Minardi.
would move above, Minardi. Because I think Magnussen has 2 12th points as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Magnussen and Hulkenberg together would be lifted above Minardi.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Haas has 5 points, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
There's been 5 races, I think. So they've scored in
Yeah.
every race. That's actually quite impressive, considering Mercedes is at what? Mercedes has 50 points, which is ridiculously low.
Yeah.
50 points only. Ferrari has 150 points in P2. I'm so here for this Mercedes downfall. But all right, going back to Carlos Sainz. So he's got an option in Audi. Does he want to build his team and lead it into the future? Okay, so he's got that. He'll be very respected there, albeit it's
Also,
a car.
the other advantage of Audi from his point of view,
Yeah.
they would offer him probably the longest contract.
Yeah, because they want him.
Of all the other teams that we're going to talk about, the other teams will see him as like an option for now. And if he's good, we'll keep him. If he's not good, whereas Audi on paper would give him the longest contract.
And they want him, so I get that. Like
Yeah.
they want him. So okay, that's kick Sauber Audi.
Yeah.
So McLaren, is McLaren looking at Carlos Sainz? They're not anymore.
No, they are not.
No.
But Mercedes are. So how was Mercedes' race across the Chinese Grand Prix?
The sprint race showed that Lewis Hamilton is the GOAT. The rest of the weekend showed that Mercedes is a god awful car. W15 is just like it's bad. It's real bad, you guys.
I
don't know why anyone would go to that team.
You know, someone pointed this out in one of the WhatsApp groups we're in, where it was, thank goodness the whole Ferrari thing got leaked, because could you imagine watching this season thinking Lewis is going to be here for the rest of his career?
It would actually be torture. Actually, you know what would have happened is it would have sped up talks to have him leave the team. Actually, people wouldn't have been able to handle it. They would have been like, Lewis needs to leave Mercedes at this point. He needs to look at other options, and the strongest option would have been going to Ferrari. So everyone would have sped up the talks of him going to Ferrari. So really, he was just ahead of the curve. Really, he was already planning what was eventual.
Yeah.
Yeah. God awful.
There was this stuff in the media where someone said to him, like, do you feel like your decision is justified by where Ferrari is and where Mercedes is? And he got like irritated and was like, I'm here to do the best job now, blah, blah, blah. But come on the inside, he must be like, oh, thank God.
He is. He definitely is, because he's saying it all the time. He's just like, when he qualified, what did he qualify? 18th? Oh my, I can't even say those words out loud. When he qualified 18th, do you know what he said in the media? He said, I can't stop smiling because I'm going to be doing so much overtaking tomorrow. Like, he was basically like, I don't care. This season, I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to do whatever I want. It's going to be a good time. 18th? Who cares? 18th is fine.
Exactly.
But
But all of this comes down to, apparently they're doing like extreme setup changes, experimenting to try and find this like sweet spot. And there's all this analysis about Mercedes just need to accept they have like the third or fourth fastest car and drive it like a normal F1 car, rather than trying to find this like Goldilocks setup that's going to give them first place. Because in like this pursuit of victory, they're throwing Lewis back in P18 rather than being like, how do we just get a solid... like
Well, I think
seventh place.
he's the one making the setup changes. Even this weekend he apologized on the radio saying that like,
Yeah,
sorry guys, I went too extreme with the changes. I won't do that again. And he did say this is the worst setup
yeah,
I've ever had. So that was him. But the reason he's doing it is because he basically has nothing to lose. Like he
yeah.
has nothing to lose. Like he was second in the sprint, so he got 7 points, and it moved him from P9 in the championship to P9
Mm,
in the championship. So
yeah.
it's not doing anything. Like,
But
but
in the race, so he
mhm,
finished ninth place, right?
yeah,
And my prediction was under a very normal race, he would finish seventh
hmm
and George would finish eighth,
hmm
right?
hmm
Um, but with this upside down race, because he was starting in 18th,
yeah.
George finished sixth and Lewis finished ninth. And I was like, that's pretty close to where I guess they would end up.
Well, you know what's funny is that like, so well, I want to talk fully about the Toto Lewis dynamic once we get through all the
Yeah, go
teams.
for it.
But
No,
before
go
we
for it. Let's talk about it now. We're talking about Mercedes.
sure, so Toto is not handling this breakup well, guys. He is having issues. He's spiraling in public, which is not never a good thing. You cannot spiral in public. You have to show a face that you are the strongest person in the world, that nothing is phasing you, that you're happy. You can go cry on the inside later in your closet, you know. But he is spiraling in public, and he said on German Sky News Germany, Sky Germany, he said that Lewis decided to take the setup in a bad direction, and now we have to pay the consequences. Something really harsh like that. But when you look at the race, Lewis took his car from P18, paying the price, and brought it into a point scoring position. George started P8 or something, or P7,
Yeah,
and finished P6. Like George had
yeah,
the whole race to do better than two positions, to go up two positions.
yeah.
So clearly it's not like Lewis making these things. It's the car that sucks, and Lewis is out driving the car by a lot. But I don't know. I don't know what Toto
Shall I tell
is
you
thinking.
something about
Yeah,
Mercedes and how terrible their car is?
yeah.
So they're P4 in the championship, right, with 52 points.
P4 or P5?
Aston Martin
Oh,
are
P4. Wow.
P5 in the championship with 40 points,
Yeah.
but they are carrying the penalty of Lance Stroll. Could you imagine
They had a
if
real
Aston
driver.
Martin, yeah, just like thought experiment, Aston Martin is Sainz and Alonso.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think that car is ahead of Mercedes.
Yeah, clearly, and they'd be fighting with McLaren, I think, for P3.
Yeah,
They'd both be like
yeah,
somewhere at around like 100 points or something, and they'd be fighting for
yeah.
P3. Yeah, Mercedes is not a serious team this year. Well, my theory, which is not really a theory, it has to be true, is that they've stopped. They've just stopped thinking about this regulation, and they focused entirely on 2026. Because why would you
Hmm.
not do that at this point? Especially with the news that Lewis Hamilton is moving, I would just stop. Like, why are you trying to master?
But the thing
Now,
about just stopping, like in reality, that's not a thing. Because the problem Mercedes has is when they do all their like
simulations, yeah.
virtual wind tunnels, simulations, whatever, they're like, okay, this should equal this. And then they come to the racetrack and like they're like, oh, it bounces. What's happening? Um, so their tools are totally wrong. And they can be like, oh, yeah, the regulations are different for 2026. But if the tools you're using are giving you totally inaccurate things on this year's car, then for 2026 car, why would it suddenly start
But
giving
those are
you
tools that
accurate
are
data?
yeah, but those are tools designed for the aerodynamics, which we know that they have not figured out the ground effect era of this car. They have such a
Yeah,
fundamental
and 2026 is a
misunderstanding.
slight evolution of that. Yeah.
It is a ground effect era, but if I were Mercedes, and this I think they have just stopped focusing on the aerodynamics aspect of it. They stopped trying to figure out the ground effects, and they're just working on the engine. Like, put all your effort into the engine. Like, okay, if your simulator isn't working for the ground effect portion, at least part of it will be working for the power unit. Put all your effort into the power unit. Come up with a 2014 banger engine. Throw that in your car. Who cares about ground effects or aerodynamics? What did Enzo Ferrari say? Like, aerodynamics is for people who don't know how to build an engine.
Yes.
That's what, if Toto Wolff is worth anything as a team principal, all of this drama he's putting on for show, and in the back he's just working on the craziest, most beautiful, immaculate 2026 engine.
But the whole thing about the 2026 regulations is the power the engine delivers is almost a mismatch to the aerodynamics. So the engines that are almost too fast and too powerful, and in a straight line, there's something to artificially restrict the car's top speeds to 340 kilometers an hour because they're worried that the cars will be so fast in a straight line that the safety gravel traps and barriers and
Won't be
whatever
enough.
will become irrelevant.
Yeah.
But then now they've realized the aerodynamic regulations are so terrible that they're going to have to introduce active aero at the front and not just the rear. And also, they're going to create this button where you press it and it doesn't switch the limiter on the battery, and your top speed goes up to 355 kilometers
What?
on the straight, so that you can overtake the person in front of you, like a push to pass button.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it's all a bit of a mess right now for 2026.
Yeah.
But let's hope Ferrari come out on top.
But you can easily see that like Lewis Hamilton is a difference maker still, because when you have an equalizer, you have the rain in the sprint race, he's the one putting the car. I mean, I didn't watch
him, Alonso came up to the top. Like the real talent came up.
And I didn't watch sprint qualifying, but everybody else who watched it said that, really Lewis should have been on pole. And Lando kind of
Lando lost his position and then was reinstated.
Got it back, which people have been saying never happens ever. Have you ever seen that happen? You've been watching more than I have.
No, but all of this, I think, is the fault of Mohammed bin Salem.
Yeah,
who's should be your twin, who should be like. If I was him, his entire job should be focusing on modernizing the refereeing side of the sport, so that like real-time decisions are made quickly, accurately, rather than him trying to be in front of the camera every 2 seconds. That's what I think his job should be. But anyway,
that's really what it should go towards, because that even Nico Rosberg is watching and he's like, well, if anything is accurate from 8 years ago when I raced Lewis like this, and that should be a slam dunk penalty. And as soon as he says that, it's like no further investigation. He's like, that's not fair. I got a penalty for that. Which
exactly.
It's funny how people
lack of consistency.
Yeah, it's funny how people are romanticizing his commentary. Have they just not listened to good commentary of F1? I mean, it was good.
I think Nico Rosberg is great.
It was good. It was
as a commentator.
Good.
He's evil. I get that. I know he's evil, but I quite like but my thing is, I quite like having the views of quite a few different people. So I like a race here or there with Karen Chanduk. I like a race here or there with Jensen. I like a race here or there with Nico Rosberg. I think the variety keeps it interesting.
I still think Julian Palmer is the cream of the crop. I still think
he's great. Yeah. He's obviously really, really good.
There's something about just people who didn't make it as champions when they end up doing commentary are so good at it for some reason.
Martin Brundle and Julian Palmer together, that would be great.
Yeah, no, some of the things I remember on Checkered Flag that Julian Palmer used to say, I would be really floored by it. But but yeah, I mean, I think it was good, but I just don't know why everyone's acting like they've just heard him now for the first time. But yeah, it was good. I think once we got to the race, it was sprint race was pretty inevitable that Max was going to take the lead and win. But I kind of wish Lewis had crashed into him for funsies. That would have been hilarious. That would have been so fun.
Should we talk about the last team that Sainz could possibly go to?
Haas.
No. Aston Martin.
Ooh. How?
Well, so Alonso obviously re-signed with Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid. Not he was afraid, but in this game of musical chairs, it looked like Mercedes weren't too interested in him. Red Bull weren't too interested in him. And he was at risk of having no seat when the dust settled. So he jumped early, secured a long-term contract, and he said, my relationship with the team will go on for many, many years, even when I'm not a driver anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. Also, did you see Taylor Swift released a song with the words Aston Martin in it?
She's definitely playing into the hype.
Yeah, but because Aston Martin is sponsored by TikTok, they put out a TikTok of Fernando Alonso listening to that song and smiling at the camera. to like continue the rumors that he was secretly dating her, which like obviously they weren't, but the fact that they're like
It might
playing
have
into it
been.
is quite funny. Yeah.
They might have been.
But yeah, so Lance Stroll, everyone's like, yeah, Lance Stroll is permanently going to be in that seat because his dad owns the team. The entire point of that team is to try and make Lance Stroll a better racing car driver. What did you think of the situation with him and Ricardo? It was one of
I forgot
the
about
best things I've ever seen.
Have you
My
seen
favorite
the replay?
clip.
He's literally
Oh, so good. His head's just looking in a
he's
complete
literally
different
not
direction.
looking. He's literally
Yeah.
not looking, and then bam, smashes into the back of Ricardo, and then later was like, he just slammed on the brakes. Like that's never like.
Yeah.
Okay, I think all of us have been in a situation where we've been on the highway, the motorway, and we're driving and we get distracted and we look up and the car in front of us has slowed and we have to hit the brakes, right? But you would never blame it on the car in front of you. Like I've always blamed it on me. Like, crap, I gotta keep my eyes on the road. I can't get distracted. Lance Stroll has video footage in 4K, 1080p HD of him not looking in front of
Yeah.
it, smashing
And
into
it's
the
the
back
way
of Ricardo.
Ricardo was swearing and shouting,
Oh, I
and
loved it. It
Oscar
was
Piastri
classic
was like,
Ricardo.
well, the rest of us managed to brake.
That was so funny. Piastri going, yeah, well, the rest of us didn't crash into each other. Ricardo, that was
And
like, I was happy to see old Ricardo
when
back.
they show the driver's cooldown room?
Yeah. I saw
And
Max's reaction.
Verstappen,
Yeah.
Max literally puts his hands on his face because he's laughing so much at Lance. And Perez, like every 2 seconds, is like, but was that under the safety car? That was under the safety car? Like, he can't believe it. He's like, what is happening? How can this guy... He keeps going, under the safety car, though?
It reminds me of the olden days when Magnussen and Grosjean, like, crashed into everything. Magnussen has cleaned up his act. He doesn't crash as much as he used to.
Yeah.
But
I think his problem was he was too often on the same piece of track that Grosjean was on. And so that was his downfall. But
so
Eddie Jordan.
How long do you give him? Because we got rid of one Canadian billionaire. How long before we get rid of the other Canadian billionaire?
Eddie Jordan, who formerly owned that team when it was Jordan Racing, and then it became
Force India,
Spiker, then Midland, then Force India, then Racing Point, and then it finally became Aston Martin. Eddie Jordan, who probably still has a lot of friends who work there, seems to be under the impression that Lance will move into management of the Aston Martin team, like deputy team principal or something.
Wow.
At the end of this year.
Wow. The end of this year. Wow.
Yeah. And I think, and Eddie Jordan said this before the Chinese Grand Prix, and I think crashing into Ricardo because you weren't looking where you were going has probably not helped his cause in being a racing driver instead of being moved into a management position in Daddy's company.
Do you think that he would be okay with that? I feel like, I don't know. Like, if you had a seat in Formula One, guaranteed, in a decent car, would you ever give it up? Why would you ever give it up? Just because people are telling you to?
No, but I think it's a situation of it's getting to the point where he's going to be pushed.
By who?
Like,
by his dad? Is his dad going to do that to him?
But his dad owns the team along with like a whole like board or however companies work. I don't know.
Yeah, consortium.
And they can be like, yeah, his dad pays for it, blah, blah, blah. But eventually the economic argument for having a driver that can score points the way Alonso scores points versus a driver that crashes the way Lance crashes is going to flip against him. If I was him, genuinely what I would want to do, if I'd go, right, the Formula One thing, I've had a few teammates, I've done okay, I've got some podiums, but I'm just not beating my teammates.
You would show humility? I don't think any of those drivers have humility.
Let's do an Aston Martin World Endurance Championship team. I'll go there. I'll race in the World Endurance Championship. I'll do lots of different things with Aston Martin, and eventually I'll circle back to management. I'll become the team principal here, and I'll win the world championship that way. That's
Yeah,
what
but that implies that you
Christian
have
Horner had
humility. Like
Yeah,
you
Christian
need.
Horner has no humility, but he did that. He couldn't win Formula 3, so he's like, I'll win it as a boss instead.
All right. Well, I guess I'll be proven wrong at the end of the season when Lance Stroll steps away, but I don't think he's ever leaving. I think he's going
Yeah.
to be in F1 as long as Alonso has been in F1. I think we're going to be looking at
Oh,
the
God.
generation of drivers born in 2020 and being like, here is Lance Stroll when he was in 2020. Now here is him driving with these
Yeah.
drivers, like 20 years in the
God.
future. So, but yes, all right, okay, so that's our last option. We've talked about Mercedes. We've talked about the China. I think that's everything on our list.
We talked about Red Bull as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Shall we talk about? No, we'll save it for the next episode. I want to do a game show episode next week. I don't know if I already mentioned that, but it'll be fun. We'll have some guests
I hope
on.
so.
Yeah, and it'll be a good time.
Great.
All right.
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We're going to bed.
Bye.
Because
Oh,
funnily enough, we have work again tomorrow.
Don't remind me.
Yeah.
All right,
Bye,
folks.
everyone.
Bye.